Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to run you through everything you need to know about an LT50 quad carburetor. So I'm going to take this off, I'm going to strip it down, clean it, show you how to fully set it up. I've got the factory settings, and I'm going to run you through everything you need to know. So yeah, remember, if you get value from this video, hit that like button and subscribe, because I've got lots more videos to come on this project. So yeah, let's go take a look.
And if you get value from this video, hit the like button and subscribe to support this channel.
Right then guys, so the first thing I've done is I've gone and lifted my LT50 onto an esky or freezer box, whatever you want to call it. Now the reason I've done this is just to get it up in here to make life a little bit easier. Now the first thing we want to do is make sure the fuel tap is in the off position. So as you can see there now, obviously you've got on and then PRI, so it doesn't matter whether it's forward, I think it's a bit tight, or back, as long as it's in the on position, not the PRI. So the PRI is basically prime, and it'll send fuel down to the carb. When it's in the on position, when there's no vacuum, basically the fuel won't flow. If you want to know more about this, I've done a separate video on exactly how this fuel tap, bench testing it and showing you how it all works. So yeah, check that video out if you want to learn more. So the next thing I'm going to do now, just to make life a little bit easier, again you can see my new chain and sprockets there from my last video. Make sure you check that out if you want to see how that's done. So I'm going to remove the 2 bolts for the seat, which I've already done, and basically take the whole seat and back off. You don't need to, but it just makes everything a little bit easier to get to. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the back cover. It's a bit tight on mine, but basically, oh sorry I dropped that. You got this cover which is obviously sucks in the air for your air filter. Then there should be a plastic ring and an air filter. So we're going to get that out of the way just to make life a little bit easier. And then the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to remove this off, and there's 2 screws. If you look inside, there's 2 Phillips screws down inside, and we take them 2 screws and pull this off out the way. You could take it off after, but I'm going to strip this all down, so it doesn't matter. And there's that, that's removed. Right, now the next thing we're going to do is remove the fuel pipe. So we're going to take a pair of pointy pliers and just pull, just give it a good pry there off the top of the carb and take that off. Just tuck that behind. So the next thing we're going to do is loosen off this screw. Now it is a 10mm I believe, but I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver because you can use either or. And then we're going to loosen. You don't need to take it right out, we're just going to loosen it. And then what we can do is just wiggle the carburetor off the intake and drop it down. Now the next thing we're going to need to do is remove this throttle cable. So we're going to basically take this top off the carb. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 2 Phillips screws off the top. So there's one in the middle of the choke, and then there's one on the other side, and we're going to remove them 2 screws. And then once we've done that, we can go ahead and pull out the throttle. So basically what we've got here is the throttle cable coming in, a top cap. This is actually our plunger for our choke. So when you turn your choke on and off, I'll just show you, basically it just lifts and drops. So that's quite simple. And then obviously we got our throttle. So if I was to pull the throttle, it basically pulls this floater needle up and down, allowing more air and fuel to pass. And that's it. So yeah. Right, so basically I'm going to remove all this just to take it into the house so we can see it. So as you can see, the only thing connecting this is the throttle cable. So what I'm going to do is remove it. So basically you can see the throttle cable comes down and goes in through the top of the carb, and then we've got this spring followed by your float, or not your float, sorry, your slider, and inside your slider is your needle. There's your needle by here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this spring back basically pull it back until the spring is further away, because the spring is basically holding it tension, holding it all in place. So once we pull that there, now there is a piece of plastic, so be careful that doesn't fall out. And then what we can do is just pull this cable out the side and then lift it up, and there comes the cable. So as you can see there, look, it just hooks into the bottom of that slider, and then obviously the spring holds tension. So if I let go of this now, obviously the spring is going to come off, and then that's going to leave the top, and then I'm just going to put the slider down for the second, and then we should be able to just pull the cable out, and that's how you remove your throttle cable. So it's quite simple really. There is a gasket on here, so make sure that this gasket isn't broken or missing. You need a good seal to stop air. Anywhere on these carbs that can draw in air can cause you a problem. So one of the things I would say is always check all these. We can see there now, I think I showed you a second ago, but my choke is nice and free. It's not seized or nothing, and it's moving, and the spring's not broken. It's all good. So yeah, we'll take this in now. We'll strip the carb down and we'll have a look. Right then, so here we are on a bench now. So we got our carburetor. Now the first thing I just wanted to show you through, so like I showed you earlier, this is obviously the top of our carb, and this is our choke. So obviously when we push it down, it lifts this lever which pulls this plunger up, which is obviously what gives us our choke. So obviously you want to make sure that that's nice and free. Obviously it's working, and it's staying in the up position, which is good, and then obviously going back down, so that's perfect. I got 2 screws that obviously hold that cap on, and then this is the gasket. Obviously you want to make sure there's no splits or breaks or any of the gasket missing. Sometimes part of the gasket can stick to the top of the carb and part of it can stick to here, so it can kind of break in half, but obviously mine's all in good condition. It is a bit old, but you know, it's perfectly fine to reuse, so put that to one side. Then we've got our spring, which is obviously what returns our throttle, which goes on the cable. We've got this plastic kind of piece here, which basically locates the spring into the actual slider itself. And that spring, believe it or not, once that spring is on this plastic, it basically, the cable can't jump out. There's a split in the side of the plastic, and once it's in there and basically the cable is in place, the spring then kind of holds it all together. So, and it holds tension on it to make sure the cable doesn't come out. So make sure you've got that. Now I've also obviously got the slider. Now if I just push my needle through and remove that out and put my slider to one side, now I'll try and get as close up. You can see there now we've got this little circlip here on this pin. Now this circlip is really hard to see on the camera. You can probably see better there, but basically there is 5 grooves in that pin. So what we're obviously going to do is we're going to find that the clip is in the middle position. So that is standard. Now if you were going to heavily modify your quad, like I am actually going to do to this one, and you want to increase the fueling, what you can do is you can actually move this clip down one, and then obviously the needle will be higher and it'll let more fuel in. I wouldn't advise doing that though, unless you are really going to, you know, up your game when it comes to how much air you're going to put in, and not only that, your exhaust flow, because obviously the more fuel and air you put in, the more exhaust you got to get out. So a lot of people think, you know, oh, I'll just give it loads more fuel and it'll go faster, but it doesn't really work like that. So you want to make sure that that is in the middle position, which is the standard position, and that's ready then. So I'll just insert that back into here. There we go. So with all that aside, now obviously everything that goes on top, this is our carburetor. Now something to make a note of, if yours has got it, on the side here you'll see it says McCuney. Now McCuney is obviously the standard for what comes on the quad when it's new. So obviously there's a lot of people out there and they say, you know, you can go and buy a carburetor for, I don't know, £18 or £20 or whatever off Amazon or eBay or any of these sites. Well, you've got to be careful, because everything to do with this carb is the actual machining and casting of this. alters how much fuel and the way the fuel goes into the engine. So if these ports and these holes are not perfectly machined, you will have issues. So I hear so many people who say, oh, I bought a brand new carb off eBay and my quad still won't run, you know, what else could it be? And it's just the fact that you've put a bad carb on there, you know. So if you stick to the genuine Mikuni, I gotta be honest, you shouldn't have any problems. And I'm a firm believer that unless you were to go and drive over this and smash it, there's no need to change it, because at the end of the day, you know, the carburetors just don't wear or break, or, you know, they're good unless the slider's completely worn out. But even then, like this is 1987, this one, and you know, I bet if I held this up next to a newer quad, you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. So yeah, so first things first, again, it's gonna be a really long video, I know, but you know, I thought I'd go through the basics. So whenever you have fuel issues, or with a quad or a vehicle or anything really, always go to the basics. So the first thing you want to make sure is your fuel and air mixture has got to be right. So the first thing we're going to make sure is, obviously, like I said before, our gasket on top. We want to make sure that that's nice and all there, and there's not going to draw in any air, because the problem is if you've got somewhere drawing in air, you're going to mess with that fuel air mixture, and that's not what we want to do. So you want to make sure that everything. Now the first thing I noticed on this quad was when I actually removed it, if you look, there's a seal around here. It's like a plastic bush that goes in, which obviously crimps down and seal. Now mine has got a piece broken out of it, and you can see it almost looks like someone stuck a screwdriver in there and they've jarred it around and they've broke a finger off. So I gotta be honest with you, although it has got a nice smooth seal all the way, which is obviously why this quad, you know, this quad's running fine before I started doing this. So you can see there it's got a nice full seal all the way around, so once it's pushed on all the way home it'll probably be fine. But I'm probably going to go and buy one of these and replace it, just because it's not right, you know, and it could draw in a bit of air and it could mess with my fuel, especially when I go down the road now and I start modifying and tuning up this quad. Every little thing like this, I got to get the fuel and air mixture perfect, otherwise it's going to give us issues. So right, so yeah, let's go ahead now and start stripping it down, and then I'll run you through all the little bits and you can see where they go. So first thing we're going to do is take the bowl off. Now I haven't actually got the right size screwdriver, but I got a smaller one, so this one will do. So we'll take these 4 screws out, and 4. Right, now this bottom compartment here is what they call the bowl. Now if we remove the bowl off the bottom, you'll see inside we've got a float, and then we've got all our ports then and our little jets that obviously the fuel goes through, and them jets are what regulates the fuel. But we'll get to that in a minute. We're just going to set this aside now, and I'm just going to show you this bowl. So the first thing to take a note is any dirt or debris that comes into your quad or in through your fuel source are going to end up in this bowl. The whole point of this bowl is any kind of debris or dirt will kind of settle in the bottom. So as you can see there's a lot of crap and a lot of it almost looks like corrosion, but it's just where the dirt and debris have kind of settled over time and they've just kind of marked the bottom of the bowl. So what you've actually got, and a lot of people will say when you have issues, the first thing to do is drain the bottom of your carb. So what you've actually got is you've got this screw here, which I'm going to remove. Probably should have loosened this off before I took it off, but we all make mistakes. So I'm going to remove this screw. Now this screw will basically drain any fuel you have in your carburetor. So if you turn your fuel tap off and take this out, anything that's kind of sediment or anything that's built up in the bottom there, or a bit of water, because obviously water will drop below fuel, any water will sit in the bottom here. And when you take this out, you can see this screw has got a little drill hole in it, and it's drilled through the center, so you don't even have to take this screw all the way out. You just take it part way out, and then it'll basically drain the bottom of the bowl, so it'll get all the crap and not so much the dirt, it's more just water and debris will run out through there. So if you ever have issue, if you flood, if you ever go through deep water and your quad won't start, one of the first things I do, apart from take the plug out obviously, would be to drain this, just to make sure there's no water in there. So the other thing in this bowl, which a lot of people, I've done another video which I'll put up above, and basically there's a common fault on these quads where it leaks fuel out of this bottom port here. So this is basically what's called your overflow. So what your overflow does is, as you can see here now, if we look across the top of the bowl, you can see this little brass pipe sticks up a little bit higher than the bowl. Now the reason that's there is because this fills up with fuel, and then the fuel is sucked up through these ports into your carburetor, and obviously your needle is up inside here, so this is what regulates your fuel. So what basically happens is this bowl fills with fuel. Now what happens is, if it's to overfill with fuel, it goes above this pipe and then it runs down this pipe and then drips out on the floor. So what's actually got to be set is this actual float is like an on-off tap for your fuel. So where this port comes in, there's a valve, and you can see up in there there's a brass valve, and if you were to blow through this port, you'll see that you'll blow through fine, and then as soon as you lift this up, it'll shut off and you won't be able to blow through it. So basically what it is, as the fuel rises up in this bowl, it lifts the float and it basically cuts the fuel on and off, kind of like an on and off tap. Yeah, kind of just like a bowl cock kind of in your toilet. It fills up with water and then it shuts off the supply. So this is exactly the same. Obviously you want enough fuel in there that you're not going to get air in your system, so you want it full, but obviously once it gets too full, it'll overflow through this pipe and leak out. So what can actually happen is, like I say, I've done a whole other video on this, but you'll see this finger here can bend over time. It'll just bend down a little bit, and it'll basically cause it to not shut the fuel off enough. So all you need to do is kind of bend it up. But if that's your issue, I've done a separate video. I will tag it above, and I will put it in the comments as well, so you can see there's a whole video on that and basically fuel leak. So yeah, check that video out if you've got that problem. So that's that. So again, another thing, we're just going to make sure the gasket's fine, make sure there's no breaks. Yeah, so that's it for the bowl. So as you can see, gasket's fine, the overflow's there, we've obviously drained any debris. I'm going to give this a good clean out, but for now we're just going to leave that to one side and carry on with the carb. So again, so there we go. So obviously this float is kind of attached to a pin, so we're going to leave that. We're not going to touch any of that, because at the end of the day, all you want to do is blow through this pipe and just shut it on and off, see where it's shutting. If it's all the way at the top, it's going to be too much. Obviously you're going to get too much fuel, so you want it about, I don't know, I'd say if the float all the way at the top, about 5 mil, 6 mil down, that's where you want it shutting off. So have a little look. If you find that your carb's leaking after you do this, just bend it a little bit more up at a time until it stops leaking. Give the quad a good shake, and yeah, hopefully it shouldn't leak anymore, and that should be a problem. Right. Hey everyone, so basically I'm going to stop that there for now, and I'm going to make this a bit of a part 1 and part 2, because I find that, I don't really want to make this video longer than 20 minutes. I think that's, quite a long time to watch. So hopefully the next one will be a bit shorter, and we'll just go through basically cleaning everything, putting it all back together, and then we can turn around then and I'll show you how to set it up on the quad. So yeah, we're going to go through all that next. So yeah, I'll see you in the next video.
And if you get value from this video, hit the like button and subscribe to support this channel.